if, for example, every marriage required a prenup, meaning you couldn't get married unless you had agreed on the terms of that marriage. Now we've removed the government doing the prenup, which it seems to me is your biggest concern.
Yes.
You love love, you love people coming together, you love them creating families, and it's really important for society. What you don't love are these rules imposed on us that might be antiquated or not favorable for either party.
Well said.
So you're a marriage libertarian.
Exactly correct.
So what you want to do is, so I think what you're telling me, just because I don't want it to seem like you're anti-marriage, you're pro what we assume marriage is, which is this union, without this antiquated gunk that is then imposed on us if it doesn't go well.
If it doesn't go, what my attitude is, by the way, and if you want to buy into any of the antiquated gunk, you have every right to.
And you put it in your prenup.
And this person who you've picked out of 8 billion other options. You're saying, this is my person. And who is more qualified than the two of you to agree on the rule set?
I think reframing thing, and I'm sure you've done this in every single meeting, I'm more talking to the audience, but like, I think us reframing marriage in that way and having like a real cool understanding and fair conversation about what would make us both comfortable in this. And then you learn a lot about each other.
By the way, and that's the point. See, and to me, that is the point. Because that's a conversation worth having. Even if you don't end up doing a prenup. Having a conversation about, hey, what do we owe each other? What does this mean to you? Like, what do you expect of me? Because I want to meet your expectations. What do you want from me?
And then you learn a lot about each other through that process, because if some guy is marrying a girl, then they have to do this prenup process, because that's part of the marriage. The government basically says this, hey, our rules are kind of fucked up. We're going to give you a baseline. Use some, don't use some, but we recommend you go get an attorney. And maybe there's even like a public office where they can do it. I don't know if that's...
It doesn't even have to be that complicated.
But so it's basically, so you go do it. And then you can learn a lot. If the guy goes, by the way, in this prenup, I want to make sure that you don't deviate within 10 pounds of your weight right now. You'll learn what's really important to that guy. And then you might go...
don't you want to know that before you marry this fucking guy?
And then you might go, I don't want to get married to this guy.
Or if she says to you, well, you know, if you earn less than X number of dollars,
I don't want to be with you.
Well, I'd like to have that conversation before we've signed up for that contract.
So I think that's like a very fair way of approaching it. But I like this idea that you're not against the union. And I think a lot of times when there's criticism of marriage, people think it's criticism of two people starting a family and loving each other. That's not it. We need that for society.
Look,
that's a good tradition.
Saying I do isn't saying I can. It's saying I'll try. At best. At best. You know, like at best, what you say when you say I do is you're saying, I'm making you a promise. And if you're not fucking 3, you know people break promises, right? So really what you're saying when you make a promise is, I'm going to really try.
I'm going to try my best.
I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try my best to love you. I'm going to try my best to take everything that you bring to this relationship and see it in good faith. And I'm not going to attribute negative intentions. I'm going to cheer for you. And you're going to cheer for me. And I'm going to see your blind spots. And when I have to call you out, I'm going to do it with love. And I'm going to try to say to you, babe, I think this is going to hurt you long term, what you're doing right now. Like, what is more beautiful than that? Who would disagree with that?
It's awesome.
But again, like, why not call those terms out in advance and have that conversation?
I think this is a super healthy way of looking at marriage. And if you're telling me right now that the legislation has already changed to adjust some of the antiquated ideas that were there to obviously protect women, but now are no longer needed, what you're basically saying is the government is going, hey, we got to update the prenup. If the government has a prenup, they're basically going, marriages deserve prenups.
And the government, by the way, is changing it, but they're changing it the way the government changes things, which is way late in the game. So it's like they don't catch up. Like, there's a reason why the IRS's lawyers and the tax lawyers that get paid millions of dollars, the tax lawyers that get paid millions of dollars are always 4 steps ahead of these fucking guys.
And
like, the top of the class goes to work for these firms. Why? Because they have every incentive to do that. So for me, saying, you know what, I trust the government so much that I know they'll change the law to protect me, that's the most naive thing I've ever heard a human being say.
And even if you want to look at the government acting in good faith, they're like, hey, there are these people go, hey, we got a problem. There are these divorced women. They're fucking homeless right now, or they're going back to living with their parents. Like, they're struggling to eat. They can't even take care of their kids. So now they're not around their kids. We got to do something to protect that. They overcorrect.
And this is the mistake. Like people come into this and they think prenups were designed for wealthy people only, right? And by the way, there's a reason why. Because look, there's times where a person comes to the marriage, they have a tremendous amount of assets.
I want to talk about that.
And they say, look, I've got a ton of money.
Yeah.
You know, if in an alternate universe, you are you now at your level of success.
Yes.
And you meet a lovely young woman and you say, you know what, let's get it, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
Do you mean if you get divorced in 3 months, she should get half of everything? That's fucking crazy. That's crazy.
And I think even the government would say that that's not how it goes.
That isn't how it works.
Yeah. But maybe there was a time where it was.
And there's still very complicated things, which is how guys like me make a lot of money. Because what happens is we have what's called transmutation, which is if you had a separate property asset, meaning something you owned before the marriage, and then you get married and you mix an asset that you earned during the marriage or income earned during the marriage with your premarital money, you turn the separate into marital. So we have what's called the marital presumption, which is basically, so like think of it, I always tell clients, think about it like, you know, your separate property premarital money is like a bowl of water. And marital money is like a drop of red dye. You drop that in, you can't take it back out. The whole thing's pink.
So if you're doing renovations on it, with your marital money, now all of a sudden you're saying the property becomes
it's all marital. Transmuted.
But you could make the argument that by doing those renovations, it increased the value of that property $5 million.
100%. And you know, I get paid a lot of money per hour to make that argument.
Right.
And then the other lawyer gets paid a bunch of money by the hour to say, no, there was no donative intent, there was no consideration.
But the fact that there's even a conversation. So the reality is why are we making money on this? Why couldn't the two of you in advance just sit down and say, Jim,
hey, you know what? Let's put aside some, like, let's decide the rule set. If we put it in your name, it's this. If we put it in joint sets, we'll split 50-50. If we use premarital money, we'll do it this way. Have that fucking conversation.
This is great. I love how, like, obviously you're an amazing communicator and you're very spirited about this, but like the spirit to me seems to come from this place of, guys, this could be so much easier.
And so much better. So much better.
But there is this negative stigma about a prenup because we only think about these people with tons of assets that are doing it to protect it from a gold digger. We don't think about people who are building a life, like in a lot of our circumstances, we don't really have that. I mean, we're doing okay, but we don't have like tons of money. And then once we get married, we start building this amazing life. And that's probably the majority of people that are getting married. The majority of people aren't coming from $300 million.
No. And by the way, like people that don't have as much are the ones who really have to worry about how do we divide it and protect it. Because if you got hundreds of millions of dollars,
give her 20 million.
Like, but if you're in a situation where, like most people, you're kind of basically getting by, well, now you're gonna have 2 electric bills and 2 cable bills and 2 everything. So to me, like, you know, what's so funny is when early in my career...
I'm sorry to cut you here, but it is really interesting to like understand your perspective on this. You're not against the institution. You're like, it could be so much more
simple. It just could be better.
And you've gone through so many where you're like, we're still bickering over this because you guys didn't make this very easy decision early on.
And I just don't think it makes it unromantic. Like we all know
how do you
life
cross that bridge?
Ends.
Yeah, how would you?
Does that mean life's not, like, did you ever go like, well, I'm going to die someday, so I might as well just die now? Like, no, like the beauty is going through the process. Like you're watching a movie and someone says, oh, the movie's going to end. You don't go, well, fuck it, I'm not even going to watch it. Like, no, the beauty is to watch the movie and know that this is a temporary thing. Look, every marriage ends.
Yeah.
It ends in death or in divorce. Your marriage will end, I promise. I hope it ends in death. That's a weird thing to say to a person. I hope your marriage ends in death. But I do. I hope that's how your marriage ends. Because the only 2 options are just going to end in death or divorce.
Right.
So you have life insurance. No one ever would look at you and go, you're so morbid with that life insurance. Like, why would you think you have to do that? I'm protecting these people that I love.